Yes, sir. Awaiting orders. Affirmative. Ready and waiting.
Affirmative. Preparing.
No yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Building.
Vehicle report. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Awaiting orders. Well. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Affirmative.
Building.
Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Unit
Reporting.
ready.
Affirmative.
Building. Unit ready.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Building.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Report affirmative.
Unit ready. Building.
Yes,
Training.
sir. Waiting order. Waiting order. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Awaiting
Insertion
orders.
funds.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Construction options. Repairing.
Yes, sir.
Training.
Affirmative.
Unit
Engineering.
ready.
Affirmative.
Training. Unit ready.
Ready and
Training.
waiting. Sir.
Insufficient funds.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Unit repaired.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Repairing.
Awaiting
Yes, sir.
acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Reporting. Acknowledged.
Waiting order. Waiting order. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Building.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Repairing.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Training. Unit ready. Training.
Waiting
Unit
orders.
repaired. Unit ready. Training. Repairing. Construction complete. Building. Repairing.
Agreed. At once. Very well. At once. Ready and waiting. Affirmative.
Construction
Vehicle
complete.
report.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged.
Insufficient
Affirmative.
funds.
Waiting
Orders.
orders. Yes, sir. Waiting orders. Very well. Very well. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Training.
Waiting order. Affirmative.
Acknowledged. Very well. Yes, sir.
Comrade. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Engineering affirmative.
Comrade. Acknowledged.
Engineering affirmative.
New construction options. Building.
Waiting order.
Vehicle report. Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Our base is under attack. Repairing. Unit repaired.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Repairing.
Acknowledged.
Vehicle report. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Awaiting orders.
Reporting. Affirmative.
Awaiting orders. Acknowledged. Awaiting orders. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Reporting. Affirmative. Reporting. Awaiting orders. Report. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Vehicle reporting. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Report. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Reporting. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Affirmative.
Insufficient funds.
Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Awaiting orders.
Waiting acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Construction complete.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Reporting. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
Building. Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Reporting. Affirmative.
Reporting. Yes, sir. At once. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Waiting order. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Construction complete. Cannot deploy here. Building. Unit ready.
Awaiting orders. Affirmative.
Yes, affirmative. Acknowledged. Reporting.
Vehicle
Yes, sir.
affirmative.
Insufficient funds.
Affirmative.
Construction complete.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. 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 Comrade. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Unit ready. Building.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Comrade. Comrade. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Yes,
Building.
sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Base is under attack.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Acknowledge.
Unit ready.
Acknowledge. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Reporting. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Insufficient funds.
Vehicle reported. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge.
Unit ready.
Reporting. Affirmative.
Building.
Reporting. Acknowledge. Affirmative. Acknowledge. Acknowledge. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledge.
Training.
Reporting. Comrade, affirmative. Acknowledged.
Unit ready. Unit
Yes,
ready.
affirmative.
Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Reporting. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Building.
Reporting. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Comrade, affirmative.
Unit lost.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. At once.
Unit lost.
Yes, affirmative.
Awaiting orders.
Waiting order. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Reporting. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Building.
Awaiting orders.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Awaiting orders. Acknowledged.
Unit
Yes, sir.
ready.
Affirmative.
Building.
Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Acknowledged.
Building.
Comrade,
Insufficient
acknowledged.
funds.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Unit ready.
Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Comrade,
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Building.
yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Engineering. Affirmative.
Construction complete. Building.
Reporting. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Reporting.
Construction complete.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Building.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Waiting order. Acknowledged.
Construction complete. Unit repaired.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Awaiting orders. Awaiting orders.
Waiting affirmative.
Awaiting
Yes, sir.
orders. Yes, sir.
Our base is under
Waiting
attack.
affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Waiting order. Acknowledged.
Reporting. Affirmative.
Building. Construction complete. Repairing. Building. Construction complete. Building. Unit repaired. Building.
Waiting order.
Reporting. Acknowledged.
Construction complete. Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Construction complete.
Yes, sir. Vehicle affirmative. Acknowledged.
Comrade.
Building.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Construction complete. Building.
Comrade. Acknowledged. Comrade. Affirmative.
Repairing.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Construction complete. Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Report. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Report. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Awaiting order.
Construction
Affirmative.
complete.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Vehicle reporting. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Unit lost.
Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Engineering.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Unit
Affirmative.
lost.
Acknowledged. 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 Yes, sir.
Vehicle reporting.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Unit lost.
Engineering.
Affirmative. Comrade, affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Building.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Awaiting
Acknowledged.
orders.
Comrade, acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Acknowledged.
Building.
Awaiting orders. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Acknowledged.
Building.
Awaiting orders. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Unit
Affirmative.
ready.
Acknowledged.
Building.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Insufficient
Acknowledged.
Awaiting orders. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Awaiting acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Vehicle reporting. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Waiting. Affirmative.
Reporting. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Base
Yes, sir.
is under
Acknowledged.
attack. Prepare.
Waiting order. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. Reporting. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Repairing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Reporting. Acknowledged.
Comrade. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Vehicle reporting.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, affirmative.
Yes,
Acknowledged.
sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Awaiting. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Reporting. Affirmative.
Awaiting orders. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir.
Building.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Awaiting orders. Affirmative.
Unit
Awaiting
ready.
orders. Affirmative.
Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Waiting order. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Reporting. Acknowledged.
Waiting order.
Reporting. Affirmative.
Building.
Reporting. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Construction complete.
Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged.
Our base is under
Reporting.
attack.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Comrade. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Repairing.
Acknowledged.
Waiting order. Comrade. Affirmative.
Unit
Yes, sir.
prepared.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Awaiting orders. Acknowledged.
Comrade, acknowledged. Waiting acknowledged.
Unit
Vehicle
lost.
acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Vehicle
Yes, sir.
reporting. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Vehicle report. Affirmative.
Unit lost.
Engineering. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Engineering. Affirmative.
Vehicle reporting.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Engineering. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Report. Affirmative.
Engineering. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Unit lost.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Engineering. Affirmative. 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 Yes, sir.
New construction
Reporting.
options.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Building.
Vehicle reporting. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Construction complete.
Report. Acknowledged.
Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative.
Construction complete. Building.
Vehicle reporting. Affirmative.
Comrade. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Construction complete. Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Report. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Awaiting orders. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. 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 Affirmative.
Construction complete. Building.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir.
Repair.
Acknowledged.
Construction
Affirmative.
complete. Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Insufficient funds.
Reporting.
Unit
Acknowledged.
repaired.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Reporting. At once.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Construction
yes, sir. Affirmative.
complete.
Affirmative. Awaiting orders. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Affirmative.
Waiting order. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Construction complete.
Comrade. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Waiting order. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Repairing. Training. Primary building selected. Unit ready.
Yes, sir.
Training.
Acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Awaiting
Training.
orders. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Unit repaired.
Awaiting orders. Yes, sir.
Unit ready.
Waiting order. Affirmative. Comrade.
Repair.
Affirmative.
Report affirmative. Awaiting orders. Yes, sir.
Unit
Affirmative.
repaired.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Training. Unit ready.
Yes, sir.
Preparing.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Very well. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Unit repaired.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Vehicle reporting.
Engineering. Affirmative. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Awaiting orders. Very well. Agreed. Yes, sir.
Our base is under attack.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Vehicle report. Affirmative.
Repairing.
Reporting. Yes, sir.
Unit repaired.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Primary building selected. Building.
Reporting. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Building.
Affirmative.
Repairing.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Vehicle reporting. Acknowledged.
Unit ready. Building.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Insufficient funds.
Affirmative.
Insufficient funds.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Vehicle
Reporting.
reporting.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Reporting.
Repairing.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Unit
Reporting.
repaired.
Acknowledged.
Unit ready.
Reporting. Affirmative.
Affirmative.
New construction options.
Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Reporting. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Comrade. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Comrade. Acknowledged. Comrade. Affirmative. 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 Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Awaiting orders. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Training.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Unit
Report.
ready.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Training.
Report. Acknowledged.
Unit
Affirmative. Yes, sir.
ready.
Acknowledged. Vehicle reporting. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Comrade.
Report. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Awaiting orders. Acknowledged. Awaiting orders. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative.
Training. Unit ready. Training. Primary
Yes.
building selected.
Comrade. Affirmative.
Funds. Unit ready.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Report. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Comrade. Acknowledged.
Awaiting orders. Affirmative. Report. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Reporting. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Reporting. Affirmative. Reporting. Acknowledged.
Engineering.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Comrade. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative.
Awaiting orders. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Comrade. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Vehicle
Acknowledged.
reporting. Affirmative.
Waiting order. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Awaiting orders. Reporting.
Waiting order. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Unit
Affirmative.
lost.
Report. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Building.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Repairing.
Engineering.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit repaired.
Acknowledged.
Yes. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
New construction
Reporting.
options.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Construction
Yes, sir.
Yes,
complete.
sir.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Vehicle reporting. Yes, sir.
Reporting. Acknowledged.
New construction options.
Yes, sir. Comrade. Acknowledged.
Unit
Yes, sir.
lost.
Acknowledged. Awaiting
Comrade.
orders.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Report. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Repairing.
Yes, sir.
Building.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Vehicle acknowledged. Acknowledged. Awaiting orders. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Insufficient funds.
Vehicle reporting. Affirmative.
Comrade, affirmative.
Vehicle report. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Comrade, affirmative. Acknowledged.
Vehicle reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir.
Insufficient
Affirmative.
funds.
Reporting. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Waiting order. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Repairing.
Acknowledged.
Vehicle reporting.
Unit repaired.
Affirmative. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Awaiting. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Comrade,
Okay.
acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Construction complete. New construction options.
Waiting order. Reporting. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Awaiting
Acknowledged.
orders.
Comrade, acknowledged.
Unit repaired.
Awaiting
Repaired.
acknowledged. Acknowledged. Report acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Yes,
Affirmative.
sir. Affirmative.
Unit repaired.
Vehicle reporting. Awaiting affirmative.
Repairing.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Engineering. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Engineering.
Awaiting
New
acknowledged.
construction options.
Affirmative.
Repairing. Unit repaired.
Reporting. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Report. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Report. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Reporting. Acknowledged. Report. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Repairing.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Unit repaired.
Reporting. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Repairing.
Report. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Unit repaired.
Comrade,
Repaired.
acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Unit repaired. Building.
Waiting acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Construction complete. New construction options. Building. Repairing. Construction complete. New construction options.
Yes,
Building.
sir. Affirmative. 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 Affirmative.
Construction complete. New construction options.
Reporting. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Report. Affirmative.
Waiting
Yes, sir.
acknowledged.
Awaiting orders. Affirmative. Report. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Building.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Vehicle
Affirmative.
reporting. Affirmative.
Unit ready. Building.
Awaiting orders. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Unit
Yes, sir.
ready.
Affirmative.
Building. Mission accomplished.
Zal Rossio. Za Jensen. Zal Roskik Jensen. Excellent work in the Ukraine, Commander. You are ambitious. Ambition can be very useful. Might find your way into a cramped corner office in a drafty old building in what used to be the better part of Moscow. I like you. I like you very much. And I am Russian. I do not like anybody. But I drink to you, comrade.